And let me quickly welcome Bayo Atoyebe in our studio this Monday morning to do, of course, the usual. Bayo, good morning.
Good morning,
and
Claire.
welcome. How was the weekend?
The weekend was restful. Good morning, Kingsley. Good morning, Nigeria.
All right, Bayo, my pleasure to have you here as well for the review of the papers this morning. Let's begin our review this morning by taking a look at the front page of the Daily Trust. Daily Trust is our first newspaper. Just immediately below the nameplate, you have two headlines there. Army generals escape Boko Haram explosives. Details of that story can be found on page 3. Also on page 3, troops recover weapons from southern Kaduna. That's on page 3 as well. And then the lead story, of course, says 15 billion naira. That's the kicker. More heads to roll. With the rider, Kyari and Daura haven't resigned. The story, of course, continues on page 6. And below that is a photograph showing dancers from Duhu district of Madagali local government area of Adamawa state. They were performing at a cultural dance and horse riding competition to celebrate the defeat of Boko Haram and the return of peace to the state. That event, of course, took place yesterday. And then you have a window of other 3 headlines at the foot of the front page of the Daily Trust. Senator Adeleke dies at 62, family seeks probe. That's on page 8. Also on page 8, federal government to reward whistleblowers on illegal weapons. And National Assembly allocates 20 billion naira for second Abuja runway. Claire?
Yes, Kingsley. Let me quickly take the New Telegraph. The New Telegraph has a very busy front page. The lead story, Boko Haram, federal government places 1,000 orphans in foster care. Boko Haram, federal government places 1,000 orphans in foster care. Comes with quite a number of riders. VSF pays families 14,000 naira monthly per child. And of course, donors redeem 30 billion naira to help insurgency victims, and 2 army generals escape terrorist mimes. You can find the details of the stories on pages 6 and 13. Now, 15 billion naira recovery, trending just below the picture story. Oshibaju panel invites Emefiele. It has, of course, a rider there. Government officials, contractors to face presidential committee. It's details of that on page 7. 15 billion naira recovery. Oshibaju panel invites Emefiele. Again, the rider to that story. Government officials, contractors to face presidential committee. Let's go a little below the nameplate. The trending stories there. ASP lover held with 5,000 wraps of Indian hemp. It's on page 37. You can, of course, see the picture of the IGP right there. Buhari, Saraki, Dogara, Kalu, governors, others, Mon, Adeleke, also on page 37. And the PDP sweeps Ebonyi local government polls. APC kicks. Lagos host editors convention. Now, the story, again, another very important story, just trending atop the nameplate. $600 million jet deal raises U.S. imports of Nigeria's crude. Crude import surges to 4-year monthly highest. Now, that's the outlook of the New Telegraph. Bio.
Yes. Well, condolences are pouring in, led by President Muhammadu Buhari, Senate President Dr. Bukola Saraki, and of course Speaker, House of Representatives Yakubu Dogara. President Muhammadu Buhari commiserated with the people of Osun State and members of the National Assembly on the death of Senator Isiaka Adeleke. He was the first elected governor of Osun State. He is described Adeleke as a gentle and kind-hearted who cared for the cause of the less privileged and the vulnerable. He was said to have attended, ironically, a burial ceremony at Guta and also a wedding at Iwo. He was also in the meeting up till about 2 a.m. He complained of leg pain, and his doctor was called in and he was treated. Later on, the doctor had to be called when he complained of stomach ache. He was rushed to the hospital only to be pronounced dead. News of his death led irate youth in Ede to block the Osogbo-Ibadan highway. The Commissioner of Police, Fimiha Adeoye, has since used a combination of regular and mobile police to restore order. His burial, according to Islamic rites, were postponed from Sunday. This is because his younger brother, DG Adeleke, ordered that an autopsy should be performed on the body. It is expected that after the autopsy, he will be laid to rest anytime later on Monday. Talking about IED explosive, which 2 generals escaped, it's been a recurring decimal. You will recall that there have been several instances where IEDs left by departing insurgents have become a threat to soldiers and indeed civilians. And this is why there is need to embark on serious clearance of unexploded devices to save soldiers and also civilians. However, Operation Harbin Kunama, which literally translates as the sting of the scorpion, has discovered cache of arms in parts of southern Kaduna. This was part of the operation launched by the Chief of Army Staff over the weekend, which is also to be taking place simultaneously in the states of Kano, Plateau, and Bauchi.
All right, Bayo, thank you. Let's quickly look at this day. Of course, the main story trending on the front page of this day, and it says, Oshomole Mamora considered for SGF. Oshomole Mamora considered for SGF. And you can just go a bit down. You can also see other stories there about the NJC maintains Supreme Court Justice Okoro cannot resume sitting. Of course, you'll find a rider to that story. Those are the major stories trending on the front page of this day. Just before we quickly bring in Bayo.
Yeah, that's right. Let's take a look at the front page also of the Nigerian Pilot. The Nigerian Pilot, immediately below the name flag, says, Ogoni cleanup gets $190 million in 2017 budget. Details of that story can be found on page 5. And Africa moves against dumping of nuclear and toxic waste. Details on page 4. Now, the lead story says NIA, DG, and SGF saga. Babachir and OK under house arrest. Details of the story can be found on page 4. And below that is a photograph of suspects who were paraded in connection with the recent killings and destruction of property in Zaki Biam in Benue State. Now, the parade took place, of course, at the force headquarters in Abuja. We also have a story there of the passing of Adeleke, first civilian governor of Osun State. Now, you have other headlines just below, just at the foot of the front page. Labour rejects Kogi screening result, and additional 350 Sokoto women and youth get empowerment training. And insurgency war, Buhari gets nod for second term. Details of the story can be found on page 5.
Bayo, in the less than 2 minutes,
Yes.
Shomole Mamora.
Well, this part of the speculation going on. Already, there was a report Kingsley read there that said that they have been placed under house arrest. Yes. The speculations are ongoing, but the fact that remains is that evidence are to be taken from key officers of the National Intelligence Agency today. Also, there's this interesting story. The 2017 budget, there's now been a proposal of 20 billion in consideration for a second Abuja runway. And already, the Minister of Aviation has indicated that 4 airports, Abuja, Lagos, Port Harcourt, and Kano, are to be under concession to partners. There's also plan called for by airports pilots particularly, that the work done at Abuja is very good and it should be extended to other runways around the country.
All right, Bayo, that's the bunch that we can take from the review segment of the papers this morning on Good Morning Nigeria. We'll take a short break now. When we return, we'll be dealing with matters arising from the UNDP 2016 Human Development Report.
Call of change, stand up, Nigeria. Change is here and it's going to stay. Change begins with you. Oh yeah, make we go. Go to so let the change begin from within. Look at you, oh get ruler. Change begins with you and me. Change begins with me. Change begins with me.
happy hour. So, you want a free Coca-Cola, but you have to drink it here.
We appreciate the gesture, we appreciate her love, and we know that she cares about the people of Nigeria.
She wants to touch people's life, especially the less privileged, or even people who are sick in the hospital. We remember that they have a wife of the president who is very concerned about human life and humanity in general.
Cadbury Bournvita now comes in an attractive new 500-gram refill pack. Simply open and reseal after use to retain the chocolatey and creamy taste. Cadbury Bournvita. Prepare to win.
All right, you're welcome back. But if you just joined us, it's Good Morning Nigeria. We are reaching you live on Africa's largest television network, the Nigerian Television Authority. As we indicated, of course, the principal item for our conversation this morning has to do with an evaluation of the 2016 UNDP Human Development Index. We have this background report now by our correspondent Ahmed Ambali as a prompt for the conversation.
Depending on where you're from, human needs are as insatiable as they are incomparable. But within the maze, there are some needs that cut across, needs that add quality and help surmount those barriers to development. Countries of the world have always been grouped using parameters that reflect level of development they have been able to attain. For the United Nations Development Programme, its measure of development is couched in the annual development reports. Every year, the United Nations Development Programme adds its voice to the examination of how nations have been able to either scale up on the development index or slide down. The report for 2016 has just been released, throwing up pertinent questions as to who have not benefited from the leaps humanity has made and why. Nigeria's ratings over the years on the Human Development Index have been up and down. For the second year running, the country has ranked 152, 2 places ahead of Zimbabwe at 154, while countries like Iraq, with all of its unrest, held on to the 124th position. Those who know say disputing the yardsticks for the placement should not be the major concern. Rather, emphasis for planners and those in government should be how to improve upon the conditions that will bring about better lives for the citizenry. For those countries that have made the leap, it behoves Nigeria to take a cue from them. Choices made in the hallways of power need to be tailored towards reshaping the options and opportunities that are available to the nation. Affirmative action, experts believe, is paramount. Structures need to be reinforced. Accountability must be the watchword, even as all elements in the larger group need to be accommodated. It is only when these issues are addressed that the gap between Nigeria and other countries high up the development ladder can be bridged. Guests on NTA Good Morning Nigeria hopefully will shape the discourse as we look at the 2016 Human Development Report.
All right, I was correspondent Ahmed Ambali, of course, giving us the background report to our discussion. Let me quickly say a big thank you to him. And joining us to discuss the UNDP 2016 Human Development Report is the Minister of State Budget and National Planning, Zainab Ahmed. We thank you for joining us, Honorable Minister.
Thank you very much for having me.
Kingsley.
All right, we also have with us this morning the Acting Director, UNDP Nigeria, Mandisa Bashalogu. She's right here with us in the studio. It's a pleasure to have you join us on the program.
Thank you very much.
All right, let's begin the conversation, but of course, going over to the Honorable Minister of State in charge of national planning and budgeting. You have an idea of the details of the 2016 UNDP Human Development Report as it pertains to Nigeria. From your perspective, what has changed and what has remained static?
Well, thank you very much. The Human Development Report is a global report that is released annually by the UN system. The component for Nigeria indicates that Nigeria has been ranking in terms of all the indices on a consistent basis at par with the average in the African country. But that does not mean that the development is sufficient. The report shows that there's still very significant levels of inequality in terms of development, especially as it relates to women and to rural communities. The report shows that in the areas of health, that Nigeria is still lagging behind, even though progress has been made from 2005 to 2015, but we're still lagging behind. And also in the area of education, that the average stay of a child in school is lower than most of African countries that are our peers. And for us in government, this is a tool that we will be able to use to be able to make policy decisions, targeted policy decisions, to make sure that the inequalities are addressed.
Do you think this report truly reflects the situation, in Nigeria?
It is. When the report is saying an average child stays for 8 years in school, and it means there's large numbers of dropouts of children, higher in girls than in boys. It is our reality. It is true. What we have done is we're going to do a Nigeria-specific human development report, because this is global, so only a small component was taken for Nigeria. And specifically, we launched last week a human development report for the Northeast, because we want to concentrate on the Northeast. It's a tool that can be used to support the preparation of a master plan. We have so many plans in this country. The Nigerian Economic Recovery and Growth Plan seeks to ensure that growth is inclusive. So we have put social inclusion as a major component of the plan. And to do a plan for the Northeast is not about just rebuilding schools or hospitals. It's about ensuring that the human development inequalities are greatly addressed, that maternal mortality is addressed, that their children get adequate health care, and that children go to school and stay in school.
Let me just pause it a while. We'll get to know the details of what you're talking about. But let me bring in Mandisa Bashalogu here, who is the acting director, UNDP, of course, from where the report originated. And I'm going to ask, for a long time, within the time space of 15 years, Nigeria has made only 13.1% progress. And if you check 2016 and 2015 report, we've been in the same position, 152. Is that realistic, and why have we remained there?
Well, I think what's important is that we look at the 13% increase, not necessarily the overall ranking out of the 188 countries. It's important to look at the details in terms of what has happened. And for Nigeria, I think we've seen some good progress. When we look at the Human Development Index, we look at the standard of living, we look at knowledge, and also living a long and healthy life. And as Madame Denab has indicated, there have been some good indicators for Nigeria, but obviously, globally, like all other countries, there are some challenges if you want to leave no one behind. We're looking at challenges for women and girls. We're looking at challenges for minorities. And of course, when you have the critical situation that we do in Nigeria with the humanitarian crisis in the Northeast, we're seeing some pockets of where human development indicators are very low. Obviously, the impact of the recession also is impacting on people's livelihoods. But we are very confident that the efforts that have been taken, especially with the Economic Recovery and Growth Plan, that the government is focusing on the social sectors and trying to put this right.
Usually, some commentators argue that these are national averages that are given, that are provided in the reports provided by the UNDP. Do we have a sense of perhaps the spatial differences, say in a country like Nigeria or elsewhere, to say that this is where you have the most challenges? As the Honorable Minister indicated a moment ago, Nigeria is now going to focus, say, on the northeast, because we all understand the challenges arising from the insurgency in that part of the country. Do we have an idea of the spatial differences in terms of what indicators are saying, either in quality of life, knowledge, acquisition, and the other factors that were used in evaluating the country as a whole?
Yes, and this is actually what the report does say, that we should be very careful about averages. And so you look at Nigeria as a whole, but the importance of drilling down to the regional dimensions and so forth. And for us, even as UNDP, we work very closely with the National Bureau of Statistics. And you know, the data that is used in the Human Development Reports are national statistics that are comparable at a global level. And with the Bureau of Statistics, you can see that the various differences in relation to poverty. But for the Global Human Development Report, we don't get into those details. The last National Human Development Report for Nigeria was launched last year on human security, and there we were able to get into the details of the regional dimensions, the difference in the states in terms of poverty levels, but this global report doesn't do that. We're very excited that over the next 8 months, we're going to be working on a National Human Development Report for Nigeria, and yes, we'll be focusing on the Northeast, hoping that it will be a tool that can promote policy dialogue and debate about the critical issues of how not only government but other sectors of society can also impact positively on people's lives.
Okay, you also draw a correlation between the policies initiated by governments and implementation, of course, as one of the strategies that can involve everyone, and improve our development ratings. Now, is it that over the years, the period we're looking at, is it that the policies initiated by government have not been, viable enough to get everyone into this bracket?
I think the policies have been there. I mean, if we look at even Africa as a whole, I don't think our challenge, and in Nigeria, I don't think the challenge is bad policies. Maybe we have challenges and difficulties in implementation of those policies and having sound programs that can target the specific areas that we want to look at. And that's also one of the recommendations that the Global Human Development Report makes, that we should be a bit more focused in the policies that we put in place, get a broader engagement of people in terms of reaching those policies and also implementing the programs in a viable manner.
All right, thank you very much. Let's bring in the Honorable Minister of State once again into the conversation. The point that the Acting Director just articulated, it's one, challenges with implementation, and then of course before implementation, enunciation of the appropriate policies. What in your opinion are the major challenges for us with regard to policy enunciation, bearing in mind the different levels of government that we have? Because some of this data obviously would have come from communities, from the local government, straight up to the state level. So do we have these challenges? In your opinion, how deep are the issues of policy enunciation at the subnational level as well as implementation?
We do have challenges. And it is common knowledge that in Nigeria we have had very good policies, very good plans, comparable to anywhere in the world. But the challenge has always been in implementation. And implementation starts by having political will at the highest level. but also in preparing the plans and the policies, that there is a need to consult with the people at different levels. And that is why when we're doing the NERGP, the Nigeria Economic Recovery and Growth Plan, we did extensive consultations. Not necessarily, I'm not saying it's enough, but we did a lot. We consulted with the states, we consulted with the National Assembly, civil society, professionals, different groups, so that we can harvest the views and ideas. We were not able to go down to community level, and that is what is desirable. For development to work out, you need to start at the community level to ask the people, what is your priority need next year? Is it to build a new school or a new hospital? And if they know they have a choice, the community is best suited to determine what projects is more important to them at any point in time. And then we do these plans and we do these policies, and we always fall short of implementation. So what we've done this time is to recognize implementation as key. The NERGP has been launched. We're currently working on a clear roadmap with a lot of consultations in the process. This is what will detail out step by step how the process will be, how the plan will be rolled out on a sector by sector basis. We're also setting up a delivery unit in the presidency that will be working closely with the Ministry of Budget and National Planning to coordinate, to plan, to monitor and track each activity as defined in the plan.
Right, Madam Mashalogo, I'm coming back to you again. Let's quickly look at the two fundamental issues that the report raised. You know, who have been left behind, how and why?
Well, overall, the report...
That's specific to Nigeria.
Okay. Specific to Nigeria, we can see that when you look, obviously, at women and girls, when you look at the aspect of education, the overall average is 10 years of schooling. For men, it is 7. It's much higher than it is for women. Women, it's
8.
8. Less years in schooling, and obviously that has an impact on opportunities in terms of work and engagement. So you have women and girls where we're seeing a clear lack of being left behind in rural communities, minorities, and overall we are seeing in ethnic groups that you also see that they are left behind. Migrants, refugees, so you're also seeing, so this is manifested in the Northeast when we're also seeing the high numbers of challenges and low human development indicators for them. So they have been left behind. And what are the reasons? Well, as we say, it's because you've had programs that are not reaching them efficiently. They're not getting the opportunities and the choices that you would normally get, and that's what human development is about. Having the choices to have a good standard of living, having access to education, having access to basic health services.
So there hasn't been equity
and if
in
this
the distribution
is not,
of the resources.
Exactly. If this is not done equitably, then you do have others who will be left behind. So the key message is to ensure let's have each and everyone as part of the process, and that's what the Sustainable Development Goals are all about.
From the findings of the UNDP, how much is politics a factor in implementation of sometimes well thought out policies?
Well, I think for us, when we look at the issue of development, there's not necessarily an indicator on your governance or your leadership issues, but obviously as UNDP, being a development agency, that's an area in which we do work in. And I think as Madame Zainab has said, the political will has to be there, the drive and the commitment by the leadership at the highest level to ensure that policies and programs are put in place and implemented. Nigeria, we're talking about federal, so you have different levels of engagement where you need to ensure that you have the best leadership. So at the federal level, at the state level, at the LGA level, we also need to ensure that you have a good public service that is capable of doing their jobs.
I'll just put you on hold. I know we're fast forwarding, to what needs to be done. We'll get to that. But let's quickly take a short break. We'll be right back.
You know, after 4 years of marriage, he still treats me like we're married today. You're so lucky. I am.
I wish I were you.
God, why? Why me?
I wish I was in your shoes. Let us swap positions. We all say these words, but wait a moment. Look beneath the surface. All that glitters may not be gold. The style of Joe may not look good on Peter.
All these boys wearing body hug up and down, making guy left, right, and center. Are they better than me?
You always look mature in your agbada. So what is this you're wearing today?
Your rib-cracking comedy, Professor John Bull, tackles another social issue in Copy Copy. Those who wish to be like others.
Look at me going to a supermarket with common 100 naira bread when my mates are buying things worth 35,000 naira.
No two fingers are equal. Every family must live within their means.
Showing at 8:30 p.m. every Tuesday and Friday on NTA Network International and Star Times.
Over and out.
Brought to you by Glow.
Welcome to the new speed of life.
Introducing the new 5 Alive Pulpy Orange.
Where is the pulp? The pulp. Where is the pulp? Where is the pulp?
Taste the goodness of real orange pulp in every gulp.
Where is the pulp?
The new 5 Alive Pulpy Orange, now in your neighborhood.
NTA Television College Jos, an affiliate of Ahmadu Bello University Zaria, has maintained her reputation of putting together courses that are highly relevant to manpower needs of the broadcast industry. The college has put together 3 core courses for 4 weeks on computer networking for television for the engineers in the broadcast industry. Date 17th April to 12th May 2017. Registration fee 80,000 naira with accommodation. Also, a 4 weeks course on English grammar and pronunciation for broadcasters, presenters, scriptwriters, news editors, journalists, and master compares. Date 22nd May to 16th June 2017. Registration fee 80,000 naira with accommodation. TV College also has a 4 weeks course on specialized reporting to cater for those that want to learn the skills of reporting from judiciary, crime, conflict zones, environment, business, natural disasters, politics, and health. The course will teach you the ways to write and handle stories with peculiar situations. Registration fee 80,000 naira with accommodation. Date 19th June to 14th July 2017. Venue of all courses will take place at NTA Television College, Rayfield, Jos. For more inquiries, contact us on 0806 980 9807 0703 660 7155 or email us at ntacollege@gmail.com. NTA Television College, Jos, training you to be the best you can be.
All right, you're watching Good Morning Nigeria. It's happening live here from the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. We quickly introduced our guest who's just joined us, Ojobo Atuluku, and she's Country Director, Action Aid International. Thank you very much, Mrs. Atuluku. Good to have you with us. Quickly, your thoughts on the 2016 UNDP Human Development Report on Nigeria.
Well, the interesting thing is that the
UNDP reports, Human Development Reports, always let us know how much progress we are making, both in terms of the targets that we've set for ourselves and also in terms of where we are coming from and where the gaps are for policy attention to be paid to. Unfortunately, Nigeria keeps remaining at the bottom of the index. And for me, even though it's a report about different countries, it's not a report that we should actually use comparing Nigeria with other countries. The comparison should be with our own selves. What is it that we have said, how far are we going, and so on. So we shouldn't look at it and say, oh, we are at this level, Egypt is at that level, Kenya is at that level. No, that's not the importance of this report to me. The importance is on the health indicators. What progress are we making? Are we reaching the targets we want to reach as a nation? And so for me, the report comes out at a time when there are a lot of government policies looking at how to create better equity within the system. And so it's a base to say we are starting off at this level now. There are different government initiatives, for instance, the social investment program. At the end of the year, how much has that program contributed to lifting us off the levels that we were in 2016? Unfortunately, in terms of research,
by the time it's coming out in 2016, the data is really maybe 2015, 2014 data. So you are always playing catch up. But that notwithstanding, I think that this report comes out at a time when Nigerians should sit down and everybody should take it as a matter of personal interest, personal agenda to say, where are we, where do we want to go? So that wherever we sit, either as government, as citizens, as civil society, as business, we know that we need to take it on board to see how can we contribute to moving Nigeria the next level from where the report places us in 2016.
Now, from an evaluative perspective, where have we made progress?
In terms of health, I think that when you make progress at urban areas, you lose at rural areas. The data, it's based on sampling and so on. And so when you look at the data itself, it hides a lot of information. When you look at the report and you look at the reality on ground, it's challenging for you to take that report and say, this is what I'm going to place it on, because it's a sampling of across the nation. And so when there's progress in health at the urban area, there's no progress in the rural areas. I say this because a lot of services we miss out where there's no attention. We miss out at places that are, far away from government seats. We miss out at local areas. In education, we may have made progress in one part of the country, we lose progress in the other parts of the country. So I think that in terms of looking at the whole rate, there are losses and there are gains, but we need to concentrate on making sure that the sampling is not just about better services in the urban, that covers the issue of lack of services in the rural. Because when we deal with data, it hides a lot of facts. We talk about statistics that give us a picture, but there's also a lot of hidden issues in statistics and data that makes me as a development worker not to just rely on the fact that maybe we made progress here and so we can go back and relax. There's no aspect of the HDI, that the Human Development Index, that Nigeria can relax on right now. So there's nowhere that we can give ourselves a pass mark right now.
But let me also quickly take you on the first indicator, that's the life expectancy. Because with the MDGs and the endpoint assessment report, we made quite a lot of progress in terms of cutting down on infant mortality, maternal mortality, and all that. But this report is also telling us that still with life expectancy, although there's been an improvement with the ratio for women, compared to the men. So what have we done? Why are we still not making progress in terms of that indicator?
You forget that we went into recession, so that is bound to have a huge impact also on the progress that we are making. The Human Development Index shows, is supposed to capture progress towards an end. Unfortunately, there are also other indices that contribute to the Human Development Index. The economic indices we have is a big factor in terms of translating into the Human Development Index and levels that we want to attain as a country. And so where we have a recession, is bound to affect everything else. The fact is that human development is not just one cupboard. You don't put health in one cupboard, education in another cupboard, and say environment elsewhere and so on. They are interrelated, and so if we lose out in the economy, we'll lose out on health. If we lose out on health, we'll lose out on education. So they are so interrelated that they are bound to affect each other. So even where the health sector is making progress, putting in a lot of effort, if the other sectors are not making parallel progress to support the health sector cannot also succeed.
Do you think we've made progress in the health sector?
Not really, not as much as I would like to see.
All right, well, let's again bring in the Minister of State Budget and National Planning. Obviously, when you talk about the groups that are mostly focused on in the report of this state, the poor, the marginalized, the vulnerable, women and girls, you ask yourself the same question. Look, how do you channel your resources towards assisting these persons, which also raises the point about how much collaboration the executive branch gets from the legislature in seeking to drive policies, in seeking to also implement policies by budgeting monies or by approving appropriations for specifically targeted groups, so that going forward the indices now begin to look up?
Well, I just want to start from the point that the Human Development Report is a report about averages. But the unique thing about it is it actually makes the effort to check inequality indexes, and that is taking measurements also at the lowest level. And for us as policymakers, that is where we should concentrate on. What is the lowest level of school enrollment, for example? Where is it at? Why is it that way? And then what do we need to do to bring it up? In carrying out policies, we must work with the parliament, because they are the representative of the people. The parliament in turn must work with the people. They shouldn't be sitting in their chambers and taking decisions for their people. They should be on a continuous basis engaging with their people to find out what it is that they need. And in that area, as a country, all of us, both the federal and the state, we need to get into the habit of real participatory budgetary system. It's not enough for an executive to sit in their office and project what is required in a community. It's not enough for a representative to sit in his chambers and decide this is what is best for my community. The people should be involved. If you don't involve the people, you are making assumptions that could be right, yes, but also they could be wrong. People that are in place know what they really need better than anybody else. So we need to get down to the level of participatory budgeting, participatory planning, to be able to get it right. And some efforts have started. There are some states that I know conduct monthly town hall meetings, get feedbacks. During the budget process, they conduct town hall meetings at community level and get feedback. But it needs to be, the practice needs to be broadened, both at the federal and the state level, and more inclusion into the planning and budgetary processes need to be done. We seek to find ways and means to continue to improve our working relationship with the legislature. It is not there yet. We're still very far from where we need to be, and I'm sure the sentiment is the same on both sides.
I'd just like you to quickly speak to this issue, because Mandisa here talked about the reason why we have remained at the same position even, for the past 2 consecutive years, and that's because we've not achieved equitable distribution of resources, which means that a lot of people, the poor majority, still cannot access, resources, and you find that we still have wide gap in income, incomes. People still cannot find paid job, employment is still at its very low ebb. So as the national, planning minister, how have we done, and where have we gone wrong in that?
Nigeria has very significant structural deficiency, which has bedeviled us over quite a significant period of years. So it's not that it started today, and that is what we are seeking to address. There has been times when we have experienced very good growth, but even at those times the growth was not inclusive. There was still very, very low levels of poverty, of poor health, as well as low school enrollment, and very poor standards of living. The current effort we are making is to make sure that we attain a growth that is socially inclusive, that industries that are small and medium are given the most assistance so that they can employ more people, because the more people are employed, the more they have monies in their hand, and then they can spend in the economy, and it helps us in the process of repleting the economy. And we're giving,
what's our current rate of unemployment right now?
We have about 30 million unemployed persons in Nigeria, and that of that numbers, about 50%, 50 to 55% are youths. So we have a large number of youths that are unemployed. That in itself is a very bad situation, but it's also an opportunity because it means it will be easy to get them to go into enterprises of their own or to work for small, medium scale enterprises, to engage ICT, which youths are very, very happy to do. And when we get to the point when we improve agriculture, the practice, how you can farm, and improve how you can mine, then you have more youths going into that area as well. Right now, the way we produce in agriculture is difficult for the youths of these days to get into.
Not attractive.
It's not attractive to them because it's too labor intensive.
And too traditional.
And the tools are not good enough for the youths of these days.
All right, well, let's go back again to Atuluku. There's some curiosity I would like you to address. Throughout the country, I mean, probably in most states, you have programs being run by state governments, you have programs being run by the first ladies of the states, you have programs being run by local government chairmen, you have all kinds of slogans that they have. Sometimes the policy environment is chaotic. Now, in spite of all of this, you know, skill acquisition, better life for whoever, we are still where we are. What is happening, in your opinion, with regard to the plenitude of these ideas and programs, and yet, you know, the average indices that we are getting with regard to the human development of the country?
You know, there's a term that I love so much, and that term is called isomorphic mimicry. There are a lot of things that we have a semblance of doing, but we've not thought through it, and we've not applied it to our context. Have you looked at a lot of the products of those skills acquisition centers? If it's women making handbags, you don't want to carry their handbags. The quality is so poor, and you wonder in which market are they expected to sell this and make an income. So there's the issue of one, planning in terms of towards what are we having these programs. Two, what problem are we responding to and how have we diagnosed those problems? Three, who's bringing the solutions? The Honorable Minister talked about participatory budgeting and people need to know what their priorities are and so on. But a lot of development projects that we do are top-down. And so a First Lady decides to do a program because that is what interests her and not what interests the beneficiaries of our program. And so there's bound to be a disconnect there. And Nigerians, because we are searching, because we are looking, we are not satisfied. There's a lot of gaps in our lives. If there's any opportunity, we'll go for it, whether it's something that we want to do or not. And so you find that because it's available, whether you have the flair or not, you will register for such a program. You finish, using the example of the skills acquisition, you finish a skills acquisition training, you dump it. That skill is not there. There's no capital for you to go and build a living out of it. And so the basic problem is that we are instituting programs without looking at the problem that we want to resolve. And if there's a disconnect between the plan and the problem and the solution, we are definitely not to go make any headway. And so we keep going round in circles, doing the same acts that are not resulting in any positives for anybody.
Mashallah, can we have your thoughts on this?
Yes, I think quite right that we really need to look at what kinds of interventions we put in place. And I know for us as UNDP, we've been working with various institutions on skills training, vocational training, and that's one of the challenges that we looked at. You know, you are putting people in a program, and part of the process was that they'll have an opportunity to access credit, to be able to open up small businesses, and you want to engage them to make sure that they have the markets. And if you don't have that whole value chain or system in place, your end result is we trained this many people, but it has not resulted in this much employment or people being able to take care of themselves. So really we do need to look at those kinds of interventions that we put in place in the programs.
But also this is not just about government, even the development partners.
Yeah.
A lot of, most of the time, the development partners design a program and then come to a country and deliver it. There is not a lot of effort being done to really find out what it is that is required in terms of intervention for people. And therefore, you now end up where Mandisa said, you deliver a program and you can't measure the impact. You can't see what it has yielded.
All right, there are a lot of factors, go into improving, the human development, index or report of a country and of a people. But basically, the point is for people to have access to, social, services that, provided by the country. And my question will go to both Mandisa and the Honorable Minister, and in fact to Mrs. Atuluku. Is our government spending more on, providing social services? From your report?
Well, specifically here, we don't discuss the actual budgetary allocations for government, but we can see that in terms of the budget that's been put forward now, there's a firm commitment from government to ensure that they're looking at the social sectors to see how you can invest more in education, you can invest more in the health sector and have an overall impact. Can more be done? Certainly. But with limited resources, you also have to prioritize. But I think the social investment program is a good opportunity to be able to see how government can support strengthening those aspects.
Yes, government is spending more on social intervention, not just on the social investment program in which in 2016 budget we budgeted 500 billion and the same amount in 2017. But also the spending on education has increased significantly. The spending on health has significantly increased, and also so is the spending on environment. Those are welfare spend that is aiding government to meet its responsibility of providing better welfare for the citizens.
Well, do we have value for money?
I think before I talk about value for money, a critical thing is that even though budget is spending more, government is budgeting more, government is not releasing necessarily more. There's a big disconnect, and I'm happy the Honorable Minister is here. There's a big disconnect between how much is appropriated and how much is being released. And I think we need to unravel that issue, because we have grandiose plans and we can only implement a fraction of it. And by the time you have a complete plan and you have money for a fraction, and the money also, you may not be sure of when it comes in, the way you implement your program is already challenged from the beginning. So that's one. The second one is the issue of value for money. Unless there's an assessment around value for money, which only government can undertake by themselves because we don't have the appropriate information, I think it will be challenging for an outsider to say. But one of the perceptions is that there's no value for money in the way that we expend. We have contracts that are very, very expensive. If they tell you the cost of a stretch of kilometers of roads, you start to wonder that, okay, if it's cost that much, is that the priority then that we should go for? So there are issues around whether we are expending on the right amount, whether we are spending what we need to expend on that, or whether the contract system has too much markup for the business persons who are undertaking those contracts.
So once again, Honorable Minister, of course, the federal government is already working on this, trying to cut the cost of governance and ensuring that there's reasonably, a good value for money. How well is the government doing in this regard?
Well, let me just start by addressing what the country director, ActionAid, said. Yes, budgets are not always matched with releases. But in the last budget, in the current budget, the 2016, the level of releases has been higher than we have ever attained in the area of capital. But let me just even give an example for the Ministry of Health. The Ministry of Health every year has some provisions for vaccination. It was only in 2016 that the whole amount budgeted for vaccination was released 100% and in one go. And in education also, the level of releases was very, very significant. We made sure that when we had funds which are limited, we carefully selected where the funds should go to be able to get the best impact. And what we're doing in terms of
value for money,
making sure that there's value for money, is putting in place an effective monitoring and evaluation framework, which we have rolled out and which is already being implemented. The release for the 2016 budgetary and project performance is being worked upon, and we will release it, and you will see the impact. The implementation is going on, but if you don't have reports to show the progress, then there's this assumption that not much is happening. We have just concluded the third quota report, which is going to Federal Executive Council for approval. The fourth quota report is ongoing, and there's a lot of progress that has been done. There's a lot of good work. I agree that project selection is still poor. That the spending, we might not be getting the best value for money. Our procurement process is very, very problematic, and the markups could be very high because we owe contractors for too long, and they factor that in. And then, of course, there is the corruption aspect, which is permeates every level of governance in the society, which permeates every institution, and we're fighting that headlong and making progress.
Okay, Kingsley,
don't do a follow-up. I want to ask a question to
can I say something on the monitoring?
Acting director.
Yeah, I just want to stress that the Honorable Minister talked of monitoring, and I think that really is a step towards solving some of the problems. And I must at this point commend the government on this social investment program, because they are inviting civil society to monitor the program. And I think that's a way of saying if it fails, it's not the government problem, it's because we as citizens have also failed in monitoring those projects. Because for the first time, there's an open invitation to civil society to actually be third-party monitors of a significant project of government, and we'll see how civil society organizes itself to make that a success.
All right, it's obvious, since this is a global, it's a report, from a global perspective, that we must also look at those countries, that are top on the ranking ladder, and we do understand that, of course, the Prime Minister of Sweden, for instance, emphasized on the fact that inclusiveness must be must guide whatever policy choices that nations are making. So for us here, we've been talking about inclusiveness. It's in fact, it's as if it's a national anthem. But frankly speaking, I don't know if we're actually achieving inclusiveness in our growth. I don't know. Let me start with you again, Mrs. Ateluko.
Yeah, I think I will start one from looking at the ratios, men to women in public office. Men to women as beneficiaries of public sector programs. Persons with disabilities, visibility, our participation in public sector services. Young people being excluded. I think these are all key areas that we need to focus on if we really want to say that we are taking the issue of inclusiveness forward. Not to talk about the issue around wealth. There are issues around ethnic discriminations. There are issues around educational discrimination. And until we are able to make sure that there's an equal access, equal opportunity for every Nigerian to be able to make choices around their lives and their progress, it's not going to be easy to attain this inclusiveness. And we'll continue to pay lip service to issues of inclusivity.
Honourable Minister, the issue of inclusiveness, you've listened to, what she has talked about it.
The federal government is very clear in the Economic Recovery and Growth Plan. One of the major objectives of that plan is social inclusion. And already, even before the plan, government has practically deployed the social intervention program, which is meant to include the poor and the vulnerable. Is it enough? No, it's not. We need to do more, and we actually are aspiring to do more. That's why in the areas of housing, for example, what we provided for in the 2017 budget, 100 billion for is to be a seed fund, so that we have an opportunity to attract 1 trillion to add to 100 billion to deploy more houses across the nation. And then by giving people skills through the government enterprise program, training youths through the Empower program, and putting them at work, That is social inclusion, but it's not enough. We are seeking to do more.
All right, that's the Honorable Minister of State Budget and National Planning. Just to indicate that we have reactions already coming in from our viewers. We take those tweets now. Of course, you can send in your tweets still by taking advantage of the Twitter handle, which is there on the left side of your screen at NTA GMN. The first tweet is from Ortega. It's in where it's very sad that Nigeria is always at the bottom, but the good side of better living. Now, this is the result of mismanagement and absence of good governance. Nigerians deserve better living. The politicians were elected to serve Nigerians and not themselves.
All right, and Low Alpha tweets, unemployment, insecurity, and many deprivations have continued to undermine the efforts of government. Politicians are favored by the system.
Festus Akimboyewa has this tweet. Says it's embarrassing that Nigeria occupies 152nd position in the UNDP HDI, the Human Development Index. Now, government needs to double investment in education, health, and job creation.
And Sunny Michael or Marco J tweets, the rating is a wake-up call for us to wake up from our slumber that chanting about corruption alone will not improve our lives.
And this is from Engineer Abdullahi. He says, through the provision of sound education, good health facilities, and adequate water and sanitation infrastructure, that's to say how you can ratchet up our HDI.
And Festus Akimboyewa again tweets, Nigeria can't achieve improvement in human development until millions of our jobless young people are employed and stop wasting our human potentials.
And Suleiman Babagana tweets, now the issue can be addressed through constructive engagement with the relevant communities to know their priorities. So those are some of the tweets that we are taking in the meantime. We still have three guests here with us in the studios. Let's once again bring in the acting director of UNDP. Of course, I mean, we've tended to focus this conversation on the Nigerian experience and therefore what the indices are saying about human development. Elsewhere on the African continent, with particular regard to sub-Saharan Africa, there must be some bright spots. What are those bright spots? Where are they? How do they occur? And what can Nigeria possibly learn from those sweet stories?
Yes, I just wanted to go back to the Sweden, where the Madame had mentioned the being #1 and what some of those things are. And when you look at Sweden and you look at the structure, the tax structure, the investments that are made in that country, that could also be contributing to why they're so high on the Human Development Index. In Africa as a whole, Nigeria, we compared to a few of the other countries, and bright spots that we're seeing in sub-Saharan Africa include our Botswanas, countries such as that have been able to work a little bit better and use their natural resources to invest in human development. Nigeria itself, obviously we can see that major improvements can be done. I think the tweets that were recommended, if we focus more on social investments.
All right, let me quickly ask, countries really, take advantage of this tool?
In different countries, I would say yes. I mean, the Human Development Report, really, it's an advocacy tool. It can be used in debate and dialogue. For us here in Nigeria, we're certainly going to make sure we go down to the state level and use it as an engagement to work with OSAP and in the promotion of the SDGs and looking what Nigeria can do to make sure that we leave no one behind. But it is a tool. And it is an option that can be used by various stakeholders, private sector, government, your civil society. And obviously in other countries, the advocacy and the work that goes behind it can have a better impact. I think for us in Nigeria, we're very proud of 2 of the national development reports that actually had a huge impact on policy. That was a report that we did on HIV and AIDS that contributed to the policy on HIV and AIDS in Nigeria, and also on Niger Delta and looking at the issues of Niger Delta and how you can use that as a way to expand opportunities and choices for people here. So it is the advocacy work that we do as UNDP officers, but also our engagement with our government counterparts at various levels, private sector and civil society, that would make it more of an advocacy tool than in other places.
How would you respond, the Honourable Minister, to the views expressed in some quarters that sometimes in the least developed or even developing countries like Nigeria, we tend to seek to transplant ideas that have taken root in advanced economies right into our own systems? For instance, I mean, technology. You know, let's have rural mobile banking and so on and so forth. And yet the poverty rate in those rural areas, the poverty rate is, you know, is outrageous. And yet we were talking of, you know, introducing technology. They haven't even dealt with the basic technology that they need to survive, to improve their quality of life. And then we are seeking to impose, you know, higher technological instruments or ideas. How do we get away from all of this? As you indicated earlier, sometimes development partners do not help in this regard.
Well, how do we get away from that? It's actually going back to the basics. Because if you seek to take information technology to a rural community, and when they don't have light there and when the kids are not going to school, then it's actually an exercise in futility. It is good to look at what is happening elsewhere around the world and to pick the best practices, but for the purposes of examining them and then working out how we will undertake our own, or what is best suited for us. What works in Sweden, as good as the ranking of Sweden is, will simply not work in Nigeria. So, and that is one of the reasons why we're doing a Nigeria-specific Human Development Index report. And the last, there was the one that was done for the Niger Delta. The next one that is going to be done is for the Northeast. It's for the purpose of really drilling down. And at the end of it, that report will help to be to guide policymakers. It will be a tool, not that you are implementing anything from it, but it guides you as to where you need to focus, where you need to make policies that are required, and also where to apply the resources.
Sorry, you want
Just
to
on, yes, on the mobile banking and the opportunities there. I mean, I think for in terms of the cell phone, I mean, the highest penetration, Nigeria, even across Africa. And this has really helped in a number of countries when you're looking at the implementation of some of the social protection schemes or cash for work and so forth. Mobile banking has really had a huge impact in countries such as Nigeria, in countries such as Kenya, South Africa. So you need to balance the let's not use technology and because people are poor, with what are the benefits of introducing some of these systems in place.
What's the mechanism for realizing the gains that you just talked about in mobile banking in rural areas? I mean, where there's either barter transactions or cash and carry. What is that going to do with the basic life that they need to live? Have the basic necessities of life, access to water, have a dispensary in the environment, have good schools with teachers who are in the environment, who continue to be present to teach their children and wards. The question is for you.
No, I think you would be able to use that system. We've seen it working in other countries. We even in the Northeast now, when we've been trying to do cash for work for some of the groups that we're working with, we see it's a system that we could put in place for security as well, carrying huge amounts of cash into rural areas and all that also is another dimension in itself. So yes, we can use technology in some ways to help us promote human development. And I was just stressing the point that with mobile banking, it has been a system that has worked even in the most rural areas in other countries, and these are some of the things that we can take lessons learned and see how we apply them in Nigeria specifically.
I think you made an example of barter. Some of the cash for work that is being deployed in the Northeast has been by means of vouchers, paper vouchers, because there is no service there, so there is no mobile service. But the fact that you want to deploy mobile money gives you an opportunity to explore things like using solar power so that people are able to charge and that the repeater station required to service that community works. And that is already in practice in some areas and being contemplated and planned by the Ministry of Communications to take network access to the unreached communities, because it's important for deployment of support and also for security.
Right, Mrs. Atuluku, from the earlier response of the minister here, it appears that government is probably taking this report with a pinch of the salt. Now, do we really need to have another national human development report? And what direction should we be looking at now, to up our human, development?
I think the minister did say they are looking at one focusing on the northeast. The good thing about the national reports is that they are able to drill down, to things that are of the essence, really. And so, for instance, when the one on the Niger Delta came out, it actually threw up a lot of issues. It also gave different actors material to be able to determine directions that they'll go. And so one focusing on the northeast will do the same thing. So I don't think it's about taking the report with a pinch of salt. It's about taking further the information that will give the foundation to planning towards what to do in an area that needs special attention in the country.
Okay, but Mrs. Mashaloglu, let's try and explore this view that's been canvassed in some quarters. Yes, there's a saying that if you train a girl child, of course, you are preparing to build a nation. But is there a sense in which sexism has come into the issue of development, that there's almost an overwhelming focus on women and girls as vulnerable groups? And yet, we are seeing the implication of leaving boys and men behind in the quest for development.
No. Yes, gender is very important, and no, I think as this report shows, that women and girls are being left behind. They are being disadvantaged when we're talking about human development. And even in Nigeria, we can see that in terms of, if you don't have access or opportunity to have a good education, whether primary, secondary, and when you're even talking about tertiary, that's another issue. And obviously this will impact on access to employment and implications of raising a family and so forth. So it is important that we look at these vulnerable groups when we also look at issues of participation in the economy, participation in public life. You're seeing reduced numbers for women, so there should be a focus on these vulnerable groups. It's not to say that you should not have education for men and so forth, but you must focus on those groups that are marginalized and where we're seeing statistically that they are marginalized if you don't invest in them.
Honourable Minister, sorry, Kingsley, you want to follow up with her?
No, not to follow up. I wanted to get the views of Atuluku. I mean, it's here. Yeah. I mean, are the issues being over-generalized?
You know, patriarchy has a way of always fighting back. No, because if you look at it, men are privileged. Yeah, men are not a homogeneous group, women are not a homogeneous group. But the fact is that men have been privileged, and then the little gains that it's it's in the country towards lifting women just to be at par, maybe with their male counterparts. There's a lot of discontent around it, and a lot of challenges that there's too much attention focused on women and the like. And so you find there's active action to make sure that women don't get in. And I will use this opportunity again to call on the Honourable Minister that as the government is looking at boards, please let's get back to where we were and let there be women on those boards. We came from a level where we had about 30-something% women ministers and the higher number of women in the National Assembly. And we are down, even though we had more women participating in politics, more women contesting elections, we have less women who are being elected. And these are the things that make us remain low as a country in this kind of human development reports. People think it's about the woman. It's not about the woman, it's about the country. If you focus attention on girls as much as you do on boys, it's the country that benefits. It's not about that girl. It's not about that family. And so we need to recognize that when we lift issues of women above where they are, it's not because we want women to take over control over men. It's not about who has the power over the other. It's about a country that needs to make progress using all its human potential to put into the place we want to go.
Well, Kingsley, I hope this program is not over-genderized.
Oh, well, I mean, it's over-genderized. It's quite clear from the cast.
Can I
It's quite clear, Honorable Minister, it's quite clear from the cast that we have.
Okay, let me just give you some facts. Just some facts. Just some examples. From the needs assessment we made of the people in need in the Northeast, about 8.5 million people in 3 states, people in need. 50% of those people are children. Sorry, 56% are children, 50% are women. And when you want to take care of kids, you need to take care of the mothers. So the component for men is about 25% of the 100. So when you're concentrating on women and children, you're actually addressing like 75% of the population. So it's not about because it's girls and women, but because of the numbers.
Oh, well, that's fine. Sorry, I got a bit confused about the figures. It's a 56% and 50%, you know, so that would be 106%?
No.
How does it work?
No. Yes. Okay, if you take the 100%, 56% are children.
All right.
Okay, both boys and girls. Okay? And I'm saying if you want to take care of children, you need to make sure that the mothers are taken care of, so the children are taken care of.
All right. The question I raised actually had to do with the views that have been expressed, you know, in the past. That look, let's not also neglect, you know, the boy child or you know the man, you know, that's growing up. Otherwise, you know, we'll have social problems, you know, going forward.
You're right.
I really don't think that the boy child is also being neglected, because everybody is placed in a vulnerable situation by circumstances. So it is the circumstances that have been addressed. So it involves everyone, not just the girl child case. Anyway, of course, we've got some more tweets coming in, and this is coming from as Filani. I hope I got that correct. He tweets, the legislative has vital role to play by going to their locality and hear the needs of the people so they can forward it to the federal government.
This is from Suleiman Babagana. It says participatory budgeting, as the minister stated, is also a step in the right direction, especially at the state level.
Again, Sunny Michael Omakoje, we are about to finish first quarter of the year, but budget 2017 is yet to scale through. How do we make progress?
And Festus Akimboyewa has this tweet: government should continue to fight corruption and poverty to see improvement in our human development. Government should also pay attention to human security.
Okay, there's one more. Frank's here, I'm sorry, I can't make out what this name is, but Frank Street, where are the psychologists to screen the right-minded people who should be allowed to embark on programs that have good ideas?
All right, those are some of the tweets that we can take in the meantime. Honorable Minister of State, would you like to respond to this from Sandy Michael Amarco? He says we are about to finish the first quarter. The first quarter of the year is gone, actually. We're already into the second quarter. But budget 2017 is here to scale through. In other words, there's still a bill before the National Assembly. How do we make progress, he asks?
Well, at this point, the making of the bill is with the National Assembly. We've done all we needed to do as an executive. We've provided all the support that we require. Even as the legislature is still working, we're standing by to provide support. So we're hoping that before this month closes out, that the legislature will have finished its work. We had hoped that this budget would have been passed in February. That moved to March. Now, obviously, we are in April. It is not what we planned. It's not what we had hoped for, but that's where we are. Where we are today. But the good thing is that the 2016 budget runs to the 5th of May. So we still have a functional budget that is working.
Okay, we have just less than 3 minutes, so I'm going to portion 1 more minute, for your final comment. How can we reverse the negative indices?
I think all hands working together, government, private sector, civil society, Nigerian citizens. Let's stop sitting in our couch, looking at the TV and making comments. It's time for everybody actually to be on board in terms of our development as a nation. We must find a role for ourselves.
All right.
Universalism is the key for human development, so making sure that all key stakeholders and no one is left behind. I think that's going to be a major issue moving forward. And not only getting government to play its role, but civil society, private sector, and investing in those core areas for Nigeria to move forward.
Okay, we've been given 6 more minutes, Kinsey.
Oh, all right.
That's
a huge, it's a huge bonus. You know, just before we get the closing thoughts of the Honorable Minister, there was a time when the federal government sought to streamline the interventions by development partners. Are we well on course with doing that now, so that we don't have partners and governments working at cross purposes? This normally happens usually at the subnational governments. What is the evolving idea now with regard to attracting development aid, and then getting them to targeted areas?
Well, actually, the problem we have is not just at the subnational level, it's also at the national level. We have found that the Ministry of Budget and National Planning is responsible for donor coordination in the country. But we've found situations where a donor goes straight to an MDA and start implementing a program and we don't know about it. So what we've done now is we've taken stock. We're continuously engaging the donors, and we have developed a donor coordination mechanism to inspect and interrogate what each donor is doing. The purpose is to know what has come into our country and what benefits that is supposed to accrue, and to ensure that what is being brought as aid or as development assistance is actually complementing government's own agenda. And in the process, we're able to see duplications, and we will be working with the partners to ensure that those duplications are reduced, so that the resources are used for more within our country.
Okay, the SDGs, encapsulates the whole, of what is needed to ensure that no one is left behind, even in the development report. Of course, we all know it has, it's a, motive, leaving no one behind. 17 goals, 162 targets. Now, the way it's been implemented now, it appears that it's been bogged down. Implementation is slow.
It is true. And the new special advisor to the president on the SDG has started a program working with the Bureau of Statistics. We finished and released KPIs that will be used to track each of these SDGs. When we're doing the plan, we made sure that we were the SDGs was one of the things that we took along in rolling out the plan, and we have just asked an independent group, to examine the NERGP with a view of showing us its level of compliance with the SDGs. That gives us an opportunity, maybe after a year or midterm, to make adjustments where the need arises. The SDGs are being implemented by the sector MDAs that are responsible.
Yes, do you think this structure is effective? Because
what is best would have been for the SDGs to be part of the sectoral plans of each of the responsible sector MDAs. But as it is, we have a special office that is set up in the presidency that is not only responsible for coordination but also partly for implementation. That you don't get the optimal result when it is not properly tracked. But that is where we are, and what we have to do on our own part as the Ministry of Budget and National Planning is to track the implementation at both the sectoral level as well as at the office of the SDGs.
Do you think this is a structure that can drive the objective? Because the MDGs was actually implemented on this structure, and I know that the international partners did applaud the structure under which it was implemented.
Yes, I mean we are working with OSAP directly as UNDP, and recently got into a memorandum of understanding to see how we can help with the whole advocacy and implementation of the SDGs. we have a structure in place, and I think for us, we believe that the institutions that are mandated to do the work that they should do, if we can help strengthen them to be able to deliver on their mandates and have the processes and systems in place, this is a good thing. As Madame Zainab has indicated, we're also working with the National Bureau of Statistics, and I think Nigeria, like many other countries in Africa before with the MDGs, there was a bit of a delayed start in gathering the evidence and the basic data to be able to monitor your progress towards the SDGs. So working with the National Bureau of Statistics, even up to the state level, to make sure that we have the basic data to be able to track and see what programs are put in place is very good progress for us. We're starting at the federal level with an SDG framework to look at how you can have SDG-based policies, programs, and also monitoring of that. So it's some work that we are looking forward to undertaking with OSAP, and also working at the state level with the different states that we've been going to.
Okay, just before I round off the conversation, quickly, Mrs. Atuluku.
I think it's a big mistake to expect that the coordinating office will also be an implementer. That is where we are going to have problems. And then it turns out that even when we have results, they are not mainstreamed in the mandated MDAs. And so next time again, they have to build their capacity, they have to start all over again because the results have been out in a different sector. If only the SDG office would actually coordinate, monitor, and ensure that they act to support MDAs in implementing the targets, I think that will make better progress for the long run. So it's looking at how to institutionalize those targets and make sure that it becomes a normal course of government doing business rather than a project sitting outside on the side, not within the traditional process.
All right, that's the much that we can take in our discussion segment on Good Morning Nigeria. Today we'd like to thank our guests who've been with us because of the program. First, the Honorable Minister of State for Budget and National Planning, Hajia Zainab Ahmed. Our pleasure that you were here with us this morning.
Thank you very much.
We also would like to thank the Acting Director, UNDP Nigeria, that's Mrs. Mandisa Mashalogu. Mashalogu, we are delighted that you were part of our discussion.
Thank you very much.
And we also would like to thank Country Director, Action Aid International, that's Ojobo Atuluku. Thank you for being part of our discussion.
Thank you very much.
All right, so that does it for our discussion. Now we move on to sports, and here is Claire.
All right, and Barcelona earns a hard-won victory in El Clasico to make La Liga title open once again. Musbadan Wahab is standing by with the latest from our world of sports.